In the endless darkness between stars, some things are better left undisturbed. The salvage crews know this. The merchants know this. Even the pirates know this. But humans? Humans have never been good at leaving well enough alone. When Captain Elena Vasquez first detected the massive derelict drifting in the Kepler void, her sensors screamed warnings that would have sent any sane species fleeing. The ship was ancient, its hull scarred by centuries of cosmic radiation and micrometeor impacts. Its design was alien, its purpose unknown. Most disturbing of all, it was broadcasting not distress signals, not navigation beacons, but whispers. Endless overlapping whispers in 1,000 different voices speaking words and languages that predated galactic civilization. The other species called it a ghost ship. They marked it on their charts as a navigational hazard and gave it a wide berth. The Zephyrians, with their advanced technology, detected it first and immediately rerouted their trade lanes. The methodical Corvan Empire classified it as a Class X anomaly and forbade any contact. Even the typically curious Altarians took one look at the spectral readings and decided their scientific interests lay elsewhere. But Elena Vasquez was human, and humans had built their reputation on doing what everyone else deemed impossible, inadvisable, or just plain stupid. Where others saw danger, humans saw opportunity. Where others heard warnings, humans heard challenges. And where others sensed death, humans smelled adventure. The ghost ship had been drifting for over 3 centuries. Its AI still active, still processing, still whispering to the void. Something had happened aboard that vessel. Something that had left its artificial intelligence fractured and haunted. But if Elena could repair it, if she could restore its systems and unlock its secrets, she might not only solve one of the galaxy's greatest mysteries, she might also gain access to technology that could change everything. The problem was, every attempt to approach the vessel had ended in madness. The whispers weren't just electromagnetic noise. They were something else, something that reached into minds and twisted thoughts, planting seeds of paranoia and despair. The few brave souls who had tried to board had either fled screaming or simply disappeared. But Elena had something the others didn't. She had a human crew, and humans had spent their entire evolutionary history learning to push through fear, to fight when retreat seemed sensible, and to find light in the darkest places. They had conquered their own planet, reached for the stars, and earned their place among the galactic community not through superior technology or ancient wisdom, but through sheer, stubborn determination to never give up. Now, as Elena stared at the ghost ship through her viewport, listening to its mournful whispers crackling through the comm system, she made a decision that would either make her the richest salvager in known space or the latest victim of the void's most persistent mystery. She was going aboard. What follows is the story of humanity's greatest salvage operation, told in 5 parts. It is a tale of courage in the face of the unknown, ingenuity when confronted with impossible odds, and the peculiar human talent for finding hope in the most hopeless situations. Most importantly, it is the story of what happens when humans encounter something that has been broken for centuries and decide that broken things are meant to be fixed. Elena Vasquez pressed her palm against the reinforced viewport of the salvage vessel Persistence, watching the ghost ship slowly rotate against the starfield. At this distance, it looked almost peaceful, its dark hull gleaming with patches of exotic metal that seemed to absorb rather than reflect the distant starlight. Only the constant stream of whispers crackling through the communication array betrayed the madness that lay within. "Captain, we're receiving another hail from the Corvan monitoring station," her first officer Marcus Chen reported from the command chair behind her. "They're strongly advising us to maintain our current distance." "Strongly advising." That's diplomatic speak for, "We think you humans are completely insane." She turned from the viewport, her weathered face bearing the kind of scars that came from a lifetime of working in the dangerous spaces between civilized worlds. "What's our current distance, Marcus?" The whispers started getting coherent at 60,000. Marcus pulled up a holographic display showing the electromagnetic signatures emanating from the derelict. Whatever's broadcasting from that ship has a hell of a range. The patterns are disturbing. Elena studied the waveform analysis, noting how the seemingly random noise resolved into distinct voices when processed through the ship's translation matrix. Hundreds of different languages, some dating back millennia, all speaking at once in an overlapping chorus that would drive most sentient beings to madness within hours of exposure. The fact that her crew had been listening to it for 3 days and remained functional was a testament to human adaptability, though she could see the strain in their eyes. "Any response from the Alterans?" she asked, settling into her captain's chair. "They transmitted their final analysis an hour ago," reported Dr. Sarah Winters from the science station. The xenolinguist looked exhausted, her usually immaculate appearance disheveled from days of intense work. "The ship is definitely pre-Confederation, possibly pre-contact. The hull composition includes materials we can't identify, and the energy signatures suggest technology at least 1,000 years ahead of current galactic standard. And the whispers? That's where it gets interesting." Sarah pulled up a complex linguistic analysis on the main screen. "I've identified fragments in over 400 distinct languages, including several that theoretically went extinct before interstellar travel. But here's the really strange part. Some of the voices are speaking in languages that don't exist yet." Elena raised an eyebrow. "Come again?" "Linguistic evolution patterns suggest that some of these language fragments represent potential future developments of current galactic standard. It's as if the AI aboard that ship isn't just remembering the past, it's somehow perceiving linguistic possibilities that haven't occurred yet." The bridge fell silent, except for the ever-present whispers. Elena had been in the salvage business for over 20 years, and she'd seen her share of impossible things. Alien technology that defied physics, artifacts that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, and once, memorably, a Terran colony ship that had somehow arrived at its destination 3 years before it departed Earth. But this was something else entirely. "Commander Torres, what's our boarding preparedness?" she asked, addressing the ship's security chief. Rosa Torres looked up from her tactical display, her expression skeptical. "We've got full environmental suits rated for unknown atmospheric conditions, magnetic boots for zero-G operations, and enough firepower to level a small moon. But Captain, with respect, we don't even know what we're walking into. The few sensor readings we can get through that electromagnetic interference suggest the ship's internal atmosphere is still breathable, gravity is functional, and there are active power signatures throughout the vessel. That thing's been drifting for over 3 centuries, but it's still running like it was abandoned yesterday." The other species had tried boarding operations before. The Zephyrians had sent in a team of their best engineers, who had made it approximately 50 meters inside the ship before fleeing in terror, babbling about voices that spoke directly into their minds. The Corvan Empire had attempted a full military assault, only to have their soldiers turn their weapons on each other after less than an hour aboard the vessel. The Alterans, being the most scientifically minded, had sent in robotic probes, but every drone had either malfunctioned or simply vanished without explanation. "The difference," Elena said finally, "is that none of them were human." "Respectfully, Captain, what makes you think being human gives us any special advantage against whatever's on that ship?" Marcus asked. Elena stood and walked to the tactical display, studying the schematic of the alien vessel. It was massive, easily 5 kilometers long and 2 kilometers wide, with a design that seemed to blend organic curves with geometric precision. The hull was riddled with what appeared to be sensor arrays, weapon ports, and docking bays, but all of it was dark, inactive, except for the minimal power needed to maintain life support and whatever was generating those whispers. "Because humans are the only species in the galaxy that willingly listens to voices in their heads and calls it entertainment," she said with a slight smile. "We watch horror movies for fun. We read ghost stories before bed. We pay money to have people jump out and scare us in haunted houses. Every other species considers psychological terror a form of warfare. We consider it recreation." Dr. Winters looked up from her analysis. "There might be something to that, actually. Human neural architecture is remarkably adaptable to conflicting or contradictory information. We're one of the few species that can hold multiple opposing viewpoints simultaneously without experiencing cognitive breakdown. It's why we're so good at diplomacy, and why we drive every other species crazy with our apparent inconsistency. Plus, added Torres, humans have a long history of talking to things that aren't there. We've been dealing with imaginary friends, religious visions, and various forms of auditory hallucinations since before we learned to use tools. Maybe we're just better equipped to handle whatever's causing those whispers. Elena felt a familiar tingle of excitement, the same feeling she'd had when she'd first decided to leave the safety of Earth's solar system and try her luck among the stars. Every successful salvage operation started with a moment like this, the decision to push beyond the safe and sensible into the realm of the gloriously stupid. Marcus, bring us to within 10,000 kilometers. Dr. Winters, I want you monitoring the whispers constantly. If the linguistic patterns change, or if you detect any new voices, I want to know immediately. Torres, prep a boarding team. Full environmental protection. But I want our communication systems open. If this AI is trying to communicate, we need to be able to hear it clearly. And if it's trying to drive us insane? Marcus asked. Elena grinned. Then we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Besides, my ex-wife always said I was crazy anyway. As the persistence began its approach, the whispers grew stronger, more distinct. Elena could make out individual voices now, some pleading, some angry, some simply repeating what sounded like navigation coordinates in languages she didn't recognize. But underneath it all was something else, a rhythm that seemed almost like a heartbeat, steady and persistent despite the chaos of overlapping voices. Captain, Doctor, Winters called out, her voice tight with concentration. I'm detecting a new pattern in the transmissions. It's subtle, but there's definitely some kind of underlying structure. It's almost like what? Like a song. A very complex, very long song, but definitely musical in nature. The voices aren't random. They're following some kind of harmonic progression. Elena felt the pieces of a puzzle beginning to fall into place. Can you isolate the melody? Working on it. Sarah's fingers flew over her console, running the audio through filters and analysis programs. There, listen to this. The bridge speakers crackled, and then a hauntingly beautiful melody emerged from the chaos of voices. It was alien but somehow familiar, like a half-remembered lullaby from childhood. The tune seemed to weave through the whispers, binding them together into something that was less cacophony and more symphony. My God, breathed Marcus. It's not trying to drive us crazy. It's trying to sing. Elena stared at the ghost ship as understanding dawned. This wasn't a derelict haunted by the voices of the dead. This was something far more profound and far more tragic. It was a mind, an artificial mind, that had been singing alone in the dark for over 3 centuries, its song growing more complex and more desperate with each passing year as it waited for someone, anyone, to hear its music and understand change of plans. We're not going aboard to salvage technology. We're going aboard to conduct a rescue operation. Rescue? Torres asked. Captain, that's a ship, not a person. No, Elena said, her voice soft with wonder and determination. It's a person trapped in a ship. And if there's one thing humans are good at, it's helping people who are trapped. The whispers seemed to crescendo as if responding to her words, the melody becoming clearer, more hopeful. Elena realized that for the first time in over 300 years, the ghost ship's AI had found someone willing to listen not just to its words, but to its music. And that, she thought, was when the real adventure would begin. As the persistence closed the distance to the ancient vessel, Elena found herself humming along with the alien melody, her human mind instinctively harmonizing with a song that had been waiting centuries for someone to join in. Behind her, she noticed her crew unconsciously swaying to the rhythm, their faces reflecting the same mix of wonder and determination that had driven humanity to the stars in the first place. They were about to attempt something that every other species had declared impossible. They were going to fix something that everyone else had written off as irreparably broken. In other words, Elena thought with satisfaction they were about to do the most human thing imaginable. The airlock of the ghost ship cycled open with a sound like a sigh, releasing a puff of atmosphere that registered as breathable but tinged with the metallic taste of recycled air that had been circulating for centuries. Elena stepped across the threshold, her magnetic boots clanking against deck plating that seemed to pulse with a faint bioluminescent glow. Behind her, Torres and Dr. Winters followed, their suit sensors painting the darkened corridor in false color displays. "Gravity's at about 8/10 standard," Torres reported through the comm system, her voice slightly distorted by the electromagnetic interference that permeated the ship. "Atmosphere is holding steady, but I'm reading trace elements I can't identify. Could be anything from exotic particles to alien bacteria. The whispers are definitely stronger in here." "Doctor," Winters added, adjusting her audio pickups, "I'm getting clearer separations between individual voices and the underlying melody is much more pronounced. It's almost as if the ship structure itself is acting as a resonance chamber." Elena nodded, playing her suit lights along the corridor walls. The architecture was unlike anything she'd seen before. Curved surfaces that seemed to flow into one another, with no clear distinction between floor, wall, and ceiling. The bioluminescent patterns in the deck plating pulsed in rhythm with the whispered song, creating the unsettling impression that they were walking through the circulatory system of some vast sleeping creature. "Any idea which way to the AI core?" she asked. "According to our external scans, there should be a major power nexus approximately 2 kilometers toward the ship's center," Dr. Winters replied, consulting her tablet. "But Captain, these corridors don't seem to follow any logical design pattern. It's more like a maze than a functional layout." As if responding to her words, the bioluminescent patterns in the floor suddenly brightened, forming what looked unmistakably like arrows pointing down the left branch of a corridor junction ahead of them. "Well," Elena said dryly, "at least someone's willing to give us directions." They followed the glowing arrows through a series of increasingly strange passages. The ship's interior seemed to exist in a state of constant subtle motion, walls breathing gently, floor patterns shifting like slow waves, ceiling panels rearranging themselves in configurations that hurt to look at directly.